The way the Democrats and the media treated it was as though it was the worst thing that they had ever seen. It was just terrible, terrible. So you can see the Democrats, for example, booed President Trump when he started talking about the dangers of chain migration.
Under the current broken system, a single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers of distant relatives. Under our plan, we focus on the immediate family by limiting sponsorships to spouses and minor children.
Okay, so you can hear them booing there. The worst moment, of course, is Luis Gutierrez, the representative who actually fled the State of the Union when people started chanting USA. You can see that here.
This Capitol, this living monument, this is the monument to the American people.
And you can see there's Gutierrez, and he's out. So Luis Gutierrez can't deal with people chanting USA, and he leaves. Yeah, good look for the Democrats there. This is what the Democrats refuse to acknowledge, is that Trump can use unifying language. And when he uses unifying language, you should cheer. And when he doesn't, you should boo. But instead, they just decided to boo him all the way through. In a second, okay, so let's go to the media response first, and then we'll get to the actual Democratic responses to the State of the Union. So, number one, you can see how insane this made the Democrats. So Cory Booker, Democratic senator who cried tears of rage, tears of rage, so much rage from Cory Booker. Oh! So he was asked specifically about the State of the Union, and he says that it was ugly and fear-mongering. Now, I just want to ask a question. I showed you a lot of clips. Did you see anything there that smacked of ugly fear-mongering to you? Ugly fear-mongering? Because that's not what I saw last night. I'm not sure what speech Cory Booker was watching, except that he has on his tears of rage glasses. And so all he could see was through those tears of rage, evil and horror. Here's Senator Booker.
And here's a guy that used religion tonight to divide. Here's a guy that used patriotism. Whenever somebody pulls out patriotism and uses it as a way to condemn other people for their patriotic acts, how they choose to exhibit their patriotism, that's a divisive way of going about it. And so the raw meat was ugly, and then the appeals to fear-mongering, using MS-13 as a way to cast a shadow around millions of Americans who are looking for a full recognition of their citizenship rights. There are so many examples of this that were just painful.
Okay, so again, Cory Booker saying all this stuff is just nonsense. There's really no excuse for him to say this because I just didn't see it last night. I mean, maybe I missed it, but that's not what I saw. Chris Matthews did the same thing on MSNBC. He gets up on MSNBC, talks about, comes out of the show, and then that State of the Union was so terrible. It was worse than when I yelled at my interns. It's worse than when I sexually harassed the help. It's just garbage. Get up, come in here, don't even shower, and I have to watch this nonsense? Just awful. Chris Matthews, go.
It had a lot of particular things that weren't rough, and then it took a turn halfway through it. It almost got ugly. Very tough about saying immigrants are basically killers. MS-13. Beginning a discussion about immigration in a country of immigrants with crime. And that was his way of opening up the discussion, like, I'm protecting us from criminal elements. I thought that got very ugly about that point.
And very ugly that he mentions MS-13 as though it's not a problem in the United States. Again, Trump did not label all immigrants MS-13. He said he wanted to let 1.8 million illegal immigrants remain in the country as a whole. So we're going to get to more media response. We're going to get to everything related to the Democratic responses, which were really, I thought Joe Kennedy's particularly was quite terrible. We'll get to all of that. But first, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. $9.99 a month gets you your subscription. That comes along with the rest of this show live, the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live, Michael Knowles' show live. If you watched our live coverage last night, you got to see how great those guys are. And you can get their shows live in their complete horror when you go over to dailywire.com and buy a subscription for $9.99 a month, or get the annual subscription, get all of those things, and you can get these Leftist Tears Hot or Cold tumblers, which we were all using on set last night. They replenish, they revitalize, they make you young once more. The Leftist Tears Hot or Cold tumblers, you get those for $99 a year along with the annual subscription. So all of that is available there. If you want to listen later, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, please subscribe to all those channels and leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation. So it was just what you would expect from the media, suggesting that this was the worst speech ever. I thought the most hilarious thing was Democracy Dies in Darkness, the Washington Post. They ran an original headline, and the original headline said, "A call for bipartisanship." Right? There's a picture of Trump speaking. And then they got ratioed. So being ratioed on Twitter means that you have more comments on your tweet than you have retweets on your tweet. So it's something like 3,000 comments because a bunch of Democrats said, no, that's terrible. Trump didn't deliver a message of unity. It wasn't a call for bipartisanship. It was mean. It was cruel. It was ugly. So what did they do? Well, those brave people, the democracy dies in darkness, they switched the headline. So now it says a new American moment, Trump adopts a gentler approach. So rallies' fiery barbs give way to traditional formality in speech. Gritted realities of governing and politics await after high-minded talk. Right? All those headlines changed. Go back to the original page for just a second. The original headlines say, look at that, a call for bipartisan. Trump delivers message of unity. President highlights military economy. And then below that it says a chance to act presidentially, at least for a night. Right? So they just shifted every headline so that it's nasty. Every single headline changed because people ratioed them on Twitter. And then we're supposed to believe the media don't have a bias? Of course the media have a bias. The good news is that when it comes to the State of the Union address, so many more people watch it than read about it the next day that it doesn't really matter very much. But it just shows you the insane level of bias. Now, the Democrats tried to respond. The response to the State of the Union is almost invariably terrible. There has never been a very good response to the State of the Union. Democrats trotted out Joe Kennedy III, who, of course, is famous for being a Kennedy, not for actually accomplishing anything. First of all, very, very bad move to have a Kennedy speak in front of a broken car, right? Just a car with the hood open. That's just a bad way to start a speech by a Kennedy descendant. They have a bad history with cars that have been submerged in water, for example. Other things to point out, you'll see as Joe Kennedy speaks that he was supposedly drooling, but he used actually like a vat of chapstick. And so his mouth is shiny while he gives the speech. Unfortunately, he didn't have the full-on Kennedy Mayor Quimby from The Simpsons accent because that would have made it much more amusing. But he was as radical leftist as possible to be. He decided to respond to Trump, not by saying, you know, President Trump said a lot of nice things. Like, these people write their speeches before they actually see Trump's. So what they should have said is they should have said, listen, if I were a Democrat, here's what I would say. President Trump said a lot of nice things about the economy. Oh, that's wonderful. We all want to see the economy grow. He has not put us on a path to sustainable growth. Here are the reasons why. Also, the president talked a lot about unity and bringing the country together. But no one has been more divisive than this president. And then I would go down the list of all the terrible, divisive things that President Trump has supposedly done and said. And I'd point out that there is a character flaw in the modern Republican Party that allows for this sort of thing, right? You want to make the argument on character grounds because people vote on character grounds. Instead, Democrats are trapped in this intersectionality nonsense. And so instead of going after Trump for all the things he said, they decide that they have to stand up for all these intersectional groups. So here is Joe Kennedy pandering to the Me Too movement and the Pussy Hat crowd and pandering to Black Lives Matter, a group that is extraordinarily radical. Here he is.
America, we carry that story on our shoulders.
He's such a bad speaker, wow.
You swarmed Washington last year to ensure that no parent has to worry if they can afford to save their child's life. You proudly marched together last weekend, thousands deep, on the streets of Las Vegas and Philadelphia and Nashville. You sat high atop your mom's shoulders and held a sign that read, "Build a wall, and my generation will tear it down." You bravely say, "Me too." You steadfastly say, "Black Lives Matter."
I mean, this is deeply radical stuff. He's not a good speaker, first of all. So the idea that this guy can speak is just not true. Every phrase is punctuated by a short gap to demonstrate emotion. But it just doesn't work. It's not good in any real sense. That line, "Build a wall and my generation will tear it down," is an insane line. That's an insane line. I mean, Dennis Prager pointed this out last night during our watch party. He said, that's basically Democrats saying we don't want borders at all, right? No walls at all. Transnationalism at its finest. Okay, try that in America and see how long that lasts. You know how quickly America will be swamped by people who want to come here and may not share our values? Pretty damn quickly. We're a very wealthy country. It's a pretty astonishing statement. Build a wall and our generation will tear it down. I certainly hope not. You know, I'd like to, if that's true, then I'd like to know whether the Kennedy family compound has walls around it, whether those ought to be torn down too. When he says you bravely say Me Too, you steadfastly say Black Lives Matter, these are just slogans. They're just slogans because he doesn't explain how these movements are good or what they're doing or why he would support them. And then he, you know, launched into his character attack on Trump, but it was really weak stuff.
It would be easy to dismiss this past year as chaos, partisanship as politics. But it's far, far bigger than that. This administration isn't just targeting the laws that protect us. They're targeting the very idea that we are all worthy of protection.
Okay, again, no, he's not. In fact, Trump was the one who was saying that Americans are worthy of protection. It's you who are saying that we're going to tear down the walls that prevent people from entering the country illegally. And then, of course, Kennedy addressed Dreamers directly in Spanish. And then he said, you're part of our story. We'll fight for you and we will not walk away. Trump was saying in his speech, we will fight for Americans. And Kennedy was saying in his speech, we'll fight for everyone who's outside the country, basically. That is not a good look. We're going to fight also for the most radical elements of American society. Pretty astonishing that this is what Democrats choose to trot forward with. If they think that they can defeat Trump with this sort of radicalism, I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that they are much better off running somebody who at least purports to unify the country as opposed to continuing the polarization of intersectional politics that Barack Obama pursued. This is why Bernie Sanders' response was probably better. I mean, it was filled with the usual stupidities, but I think even Bernie Sanders looked tired last night. I mean, Sanders gave a response, and Sanders always looks tired because he's 1,000 years old and did not have his proper share of pudding last night before he gave his State of the Union response address. He should have been focusing, as I say, on character issues and also on the 1% and sustainable growth and all the rest of this. But he has to just go down the progressive talking points list instead. I mean, it was Trump's night, and it was pretty obvious it was Trump's night from Sanders' response. And Sanders spends time ripping on Trump for not talking about climate change. Okay, when you look at the polls, climate change is like number 11, number 13 on Americans' list of concerns, but that's where Bernie Sanders chooses to go.
Now, I don't understand how a president of the United States can give a State of the Union speech and not mention climate change. No, Mr. Trump, climate change is not a hoax. It is a reality which is causing devastating harm all over our country and all over the world. And you are dead wrong when you appoint administrators at the EPA and other agencies who are trying to decimate environmental protection rules and slow down the transition to sustainable energy.
Oh, yeah, good luck with this. I mean, first of all, him looking like he's appearing on a C-SPAN call-in unit in the middle of the State of the Union response is not a good look. It was Trump's night. This was the best night that Trump has had in a very long time. If Trump could sustain it, then I'd be optimistic for 2018 and 2020. I highly doubt that it will be sustained just because that has not been the pattern thus far. But there's no question it was a good night for Trump. It was a bad night for Democrats, and we'll see if they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. Democrats really shot themselves in the foot last night, even more than Trump won himself a victory. Okay.